There are no words to describe quite how disturbing this is. Truly, I feel like there's nothing that I could tell you to prepare you. But I do want to give a trigger warning here. We're talking about attacks on schools, specifically one that occurred back in 2012 at Sandy Hook Elementary School. So if this is a sensitive topic for you and you need to skip this video, I completely understand. Again, your mental health is always number one priority. Skip this video. I will see you in my next one. Take care of yourselves. I mean it. I love you. Earlier this year in Florida, authorities received a tip letting them know that a student was planning to murder another student in a bathroom at Lake Brantley High School. As soon as the police department received the tip, they moved immediately. Lake Brantley is a large public high school of more than 2,700 students located around 12 miles north of Orlando. And within 24 hours, that school would be on the headlines of every major news outlet in the country. Because what investigators were about to unravel was so much deeper than they could have ever imagined. It was a premeditated murder plot rooted in romanticizing the worst of the worst criminals, a disturbing ritual, and a friendship between two teenage girls who really did bring out the worst in each other. 15-year-old Isabel Valdez and 14-year-old Lois Lippert were both students at Lake Brantley High School. Isabel went by the nickname Jimmy among her friend group. She was a sophomore and presented herself to the outside world as social and outgoing. But there is a disconnect in the way that she wanted to present herself versus the way that she actually felt inside. This is a quote from her, quote, "I was never really shy, I just hated people. I pretended to be a socialite to make you guys happy," end quote. Lois was 14 years old, so she was 1 year younger than Isabel, and the two of them have been described to be best friends. Now, a notable hobby that Lois had that you should know about is drawing. She loved to hand draw sketches on paper all the time. That in itself would be quite innocent, but it's the opposite of that when you learn what kind of drawing she liked to do, because she would draw people, sometimes infamous criminals such as Elliot Rodgers or Jeffrey Dahmer, sometimes classmates and or even friends, in very, very, very violent, disturbing ways. They are very uncomfortable drawings even just to see, let alone when you begin to imagine what must have been going through her head when she was putting the pen to the paper. Then we have her best friend Isabel, who had a very, very dark fascination with criminals. And she specifically had this really big romantic fascination with the guy responsible for what happened at Sandy Hook back in 2012, where there were 26 victims, 6 adults and 20 children who woke up, attended school, and never made it out of there. Isabel romanticized the individual responsible for that so much. She looked up to him, she respected him, she dreamt about him, she wanted to be with him. So much so that she was willing to commit a ritual, sacrifice one of her classmates in the hopes that doing that would mean that she would resurrect the guy responsible for Sandy Hook. A life for a life is what she became convinced of, and she thought that the perfect person to help her with this new plan of hers was none other than her best friend, Lois Lippert. By 2025, Lois herself also had become fixated on this criminal through an online community she referred to as TCC, the True Crime Community. She would later go on to say that this community had a very, very terrible influence on her and made her want to do bad things. So when Isabel tells her about this plan of sacrificing their classmate, she wasn't only on board, but she became really, really excited to make it happen. Now, back to Isabel. According to the police report, Isabel told investigators that she used to be able to hear this specific criminal's voice inside of her head, but as of recent, she no longer could. And she believed that murdering a specific classmate who she thought physically resembled this criminal that they both loved so much would bring his voice back, resurrect him, or both. And if they successfully were able to do it, Isabel would finally get to be with him and get to hear his voice again. Oh, because he's no longer here. I don't know if I mentioned that, you could probably tell, but he's no longer here. So her entire motive for wanting to bring him back to life was because he was her soulmate and they could finally be reunited. And she referred to this murder plot that they planned out as a, quote, fair and beautiful scene of devotion. So Isabel and Lois start having conversations about how they're going to commit this ritual, how they're going to plan this murder out. And the plan that they come up with is as follows. Well, first they need to pick out the victim, which was easy because it was a male classmate that they often saw, and the next step was then to watch him for weeks to learn his routine and learn where and when he walked around specific areas of the school. After learning that, the plan that they come up with was that Isabel was going to wait for him in the boys' bathroom at the school after second period. She was going to stand there and wait for him to walk by like she knew that he would, and then she would pull him into the bathroom. Once inside, they allegedly attempted to make as sharp as possible. She would either him him in the stomach or across his neck, ending his life. She would leave flowers at the scene. She would put on latex gloves beforehand. She would use trash bags and wipes to clean up the scene afterwards, and that would be that. She also was expected for them both to be arrested, but they were okay with that. As far as what Lois would do, well, her role instructed by Isabel would be to bring a chocolate bar as a snack, I guess, and the flowers to place on top of the body because that would be their funeral for their victim, among other things. Lois also helped in the process of preparing the weapon to make sure that it was sharp enough. And the plan also had a final chapter, which was to brag about what they did, spreading their story through the TCC community after the attack. But they, again, expected that they were going to get arrested, so I'm not sure what their plan exactly was with that. But they spoke about this in the patrol car after their arrest, saying directly, quote, "We were supposed to spread our story around the TCC." So the murder they were planning didn't only feel like a ritual, it also weirdly felt like this performance that they intended to do for an audience. Like they wanted people to look up to them for what they did. So their plan was ready, and the morning of January 23rd, 2026 began like any other school day at Lake Brantley. Students were arriving, lockers were opening, everyone was heading to class. Meanwhile, inside her backpack, Isabel carried the weapon, the latex gloves, trash bags, and wipes. Lois had the chocolate bar, the flowers, etc. in her bag, and they were ready to go. Investigators estimated that they arrived at school approximately 20 minutes before they intended to carry out the attack. But the tip that I told you about happened very, very late the night before. So law enforcement officials were already in motion. The tip had come in just after midnight, I believe, the night before. And it came from a student who was claiming that Isabel had told them exactly what she was planning on doing. And that student expressed their concern and their belief that it was actually going to happen and that Isabel was actually planning on going through with it. Isabel Valdez gets pulled out of class to speak with the assistant principal before officers arrived. Once the officers did arrive, both Isabel and Lois got arrested on school grounds. They got taken and put in the back of the same police car. And by the way, the student they were targeting is alive, unharmed, and he had absolutely no idea of what almost happened to him. I cannot fathom being him and learning about what they were planning on doing to him, but I'm happy to say that he is alive, he is safe, and he's okay. What happened next, when they were both sitting in the back of that police car, is perhaps one of the most shocking pieces of this case, because there is interior footage of inside the patrol car that has been released, and it shows the two of them, Isabel and Lois, in the back seat minutes after their arrest, laughing, cracking up about the entire thing. And it's not like nervous laughter, it's like full-on joking laughter. They're like having fun. They're in a great mood. They're visibly so excited about this situation that they found themselves in. Lois saying, quote, "This is such a bonding experience. I love this." The conversations that they had in that car while sitting in the backseat covered a plethora of subjects. They discussed the anonymous tip who had reported them. They talked about their plan and how great of a plan it was. They talked about going to prison and if they were going to get to go to the same prison together, and when they found out that they were, they got so excited about doing their makeup and if they were going to look good and beautiful in their mugshots, about their love and passion for criminals. It was a lot, and I can guarantee you that whatever you're thinking in your head, make it 100 times worse. It is just about as bad as it can get. You guys can look up the video yourselves. But again, they're laughing, giggling, smiling the entire time. Isabel even flat out saying, quote, "I don't feel guilty for my actions." And because they were so jolly and so happy about the entire thing, once in custody, both were denied bond. When they were officially questioned, both of them confessed to everything fully, which is why we have all this information, because they spoke proudly and in detail about their intentions, and yet they both pleaded not guilty to their charges. After their arrest, there were two letters that emerged, both written by Isabel. She wrote them at different stages in completely different narratives, which honestly, when you read them both, they show one of the most psychologically complex characters in a person. The first one was a letter that she wrote to her parents before the attack. It read, quote, "Dear Mama and Papa, I'm sorry for what I'm gonna do." She told her parents that they had been, quote, "the most perfect parents ever." She apologized for not being a better child. She described hating people, being forced to talk as torture, and saying that she deserved more than what was coming to her, describing herself as disgusting, cruel, and useless. She ended it by bringing up the criminal that she wanted to bring back to life, saying that she loved him and saying, quote, "We're soulmates, just waiting to be reunited once more." The second letter arrived in May of 2026. This one was addressed not to her parents, but to the judge that was overseeing her case. And the tone in this one was completely different. She wrote, quote, "I'm very remorseful for my actions." She described the isolation of jail, cut off from people and the internet, as having changed her perspective entirely. And she said about her best friend Lois, quote, "We both got worse together," unquote. So in that letter, she was showing remorse for the first time, but that isn't going to cut it when you compare it to how excited and happy she was for 30 long minutes in the back of the police car when she first got arrested. So on June 24th, 2026, so about 5 months after they were first arrested, a grand jury met to formally review the case. A grand jury is a group of people who look at the evidence and decide whether there is enough evidence or not to officially charge someone with crimes. When they all agreed that there was enough, they issued what is called an indictment, basically an official document listing all of the charges. When they first arrested them both back in January, there were only a handful of charges, but by June, after 5 months of the investigation, that number had grown significantly, all the way up to 27 separate charges split between the two of them. The investigation also revealed that the alleged conduct did not stop in January. According to the indictment, things were happening between January and May of 2026. Meaning the investigation uncovered behavior that continued even after the original arrest, or that predated it further back than investigators first realized. And when they were first arrested, investigators had identified 6 students as potential victims, but by the time the grand jury met, a 7th had been identified, meaning that one more person had come forward or been identified through the investigation, one more person than the public had previously heard about. And that's still not all, because there is the entire other investigation that was being conducted on Isabel Valdez. That investigation began when police flagged a concerning digital file on Isabel's phone. When the examination of the content found on her phone was completed, it resulted in 10 additional charges for Isabel for possession of cesium. Isabel was already in custody when that investigation was completed, but on top of the additional charges, she was also banned from contacting anyone under the age of 18, from accessing the internet, and from being present anywhere where children could be. So that's where we are now, and no trial date has been set that I could find, so we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, so disturbing. Obviously so glad that nothing happened to that student, but so scary to have 2 people that are so young having such sick and disturbing, twisted things that go on in their minds. Yeah, they need help, serious help. But that's it for me today. Let me know if you guys have heard about this case, and let me know what your thoughts are on it. And yeah, thank you for spending time with me today. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.